So, hello everyone. My name is Ondra Machacek, and in this presentation, I would like to tell you about Ansible modules for oVirt. If you have any question during the presentation, you may ask me on the YouTube video comments, or you can contact me on my email omachacek@redhat.com, or you may find me on IRC as omachacek at oVirt on OFTC. So, in this presentation, first of all, I will tell you something about Ansible, how it works, and what it is. Then I will tell you about dynamic inventory for oVirt, and basically about dynamic inventory, what it is and how it works. Then I will tell you about oVirt modules, some basic information, what's supported, what's not. And then I will show you a live demo of the oVirt modules. So, Ansible is an orchestration tool. It can be also used as a deployment tool, or as a provisioning tool, or a configuration management tool. The important thing about Ansible is that it's simple, and so everyone can learn it very quickly and also use it very quickly. The basic design of the Ansible is that it's using a control node which manages managed nodes. So the control node is usually your notebook where the Ansible is installed, and from that control node you then manage the remote nodes via the Ansible playbooks or Ansible scripts. This is different from other configuration management tools like, for example, Puppet or Chef, which uses client-server architecture, where you have some agent or managed nodes, and those agents fetches the information from the server and applies those informations. So, Ansible is engine-less tool. That means that on your managed nodes, you don't need any special agents. Ansible connects from the control nodes to the managed nodes via the SSH for Unix systems and via the Windows remote management for Windows systems. Ansible is working as a push model, which means that on your control node, you write some script. This script is packaged, pushed to the managed node, and then it's executed there. Ansible can work also as a pull model, but mostly Ansible is used as push model. The playbooks are Ansible scripts, simply said. It's a domain-specific language built on top of YAML, so it's human-readable and pretty simple. In this YAML file, you specify your infrastructure as a data. You basically document your infrastructure, and it's simple to read. It's much more simpler than, for example, some bash scripts, undocumented, etc. The playbooks work with three main stuff. It's inventory, tasks, and modules. In every playbook, if you execute a playbook, you need to specify which inventory should be used. The inventory specified which managed nodes should be used for that specific playbook. So you can, for example, have a web server group where you have 3 virtual machines which you want to manage. Then the second important thing is tasks. The tasks defines what tasks basically should be executed on those managed nodes. Those tasks are calling modules. The modules are Python scripts, or it may be also scripts in any other language. And these Python scripts or scripts are packaged, transferred to the manage node, and executed there. The important thing about modules is that it should be idempotent, which means that if you re-execute that module for a second time, it should not take that action again, but it should know that that action was already taken. Now, I will show you. Now I will show you the short example of how Ansible playbook looks like and how it's executed. So here I will create a playbook called example. The first thing you always need to specify is which hosts you want to use. In this example, we only use a local host, which means we don't be using any managed nodes. Basically, we will use only our own machine. So the tasks in this example will be only the one task which just create a directory if it does not exist. The directory will be in temp and it will be called the dir. And as you can see, we here specify permissions of this directory as 755. We will then change them, and you will see that Ansible will replace that permissions again if we re-execute it. Now, if we execute the playbook, as you can see, we are using here Ansible playbook command, and we pass it the path to our playbook. As you can see pretty nice output, what hosts it's using, the setup task, which means gathering information from the host it's using, and then our task, which is the creating of the directory. As you can see, the directory was created as the output of the task is saying that it was changed. We do ls of the directory, we can see it has a 755 permissions. Now, if we execute the playbook, we can see nothing was changed. Everything is in the state we want. As you can see, still the same. Now, if we will change the permissions of the directory and re-execute the playbook, we can see that the playbook will change the permissions again to what we want. This is actually basically the main concept. Now, we will tell, what Ansible can't be used for. You can't use Ansible for some minimal system installation. You always work with some system which already has SSH. You can't use it for, you can monitor configuration changes, and there is no history of the changes which was made. Now, as we already talked about static inventories, which is basically a group of some hosts you need to have on your file system, you need to specify it by your own. But if you want to use some dynamic environment where you have your hosts which you want to manage, then you need to use dynamic inventory. The dynamic inventory is usually a Python script which fetches the information from that specific environment, like LDAP, Cobbler, or oVirt, OpenStack, etc. This script fetches the informations. I will be talking here about oVirt. So oVirt fetches the information from oVirt about virtual machines. Those virtual machines are then grouped in the following groups: the cluster groups, tag groups. They are grouped also by statuses and also by affinity groups and affinity labels. So if you run this script, you will get, for example, all the VMs which are up in one group. You can later use this group to execute some specific tasks on all of those VMs. So basically, you can update the VMs in some specific cluster. or with some specific tag. This dynamic inventory script is not shipped with RPM, so if you want to use it, you must download it from the GitHub. But usually those scripts are used in Ansible Tower, so it's not a problem. Now I will show you how this usage of the dynamic inventory script for the oVirt. First of all, you need to download that script from the GitHub. It must be executable because you will be executing it. Then you need to specify the credentials which should be used to connect to the oVirt in the oVirt in a file. And then you can execute it. You can see the output of the dynamic inventory script for oVirt is pretty simple. First of all, it displays all the VMs and all the information about that VM, affinity groups, labels, etc. In this environment, it's pretty simple environment. I have only two VMs, VM1, rel7, and VM2, rel7. Those two VMs are grouped in some groups, which you can see here at the bottom. It's cluster, my cluster. So those VMs are in a cluster, my cluster. And the dynamic inventory will create this specific group, which you can later use. Then there is a group status up, which, as you can see, both of those VMs are up, as you can see also here, status up and status up. So our dynamic inventory will create two groups, which are called as follows, as you can see here. So now we can create a playbook where we define the groups which fetches the dynamic inventory script. It's pretty same as the previous example. You just specify, instead of localhost, you specify here the group which the dynamic inventory script will get you. Now, in this example, we just update the PostgreSQL package with the yum module, and that's it. So now, when you're executing the Ansible playbook command, you just need to pass -e, -i, and oVirt.py path to your script and your playbook. As you can see in a few seconds, all of the VMs in the cluster, my cluster, will have updated PostgreSQL package. As you can see, it was updated. If we run that playbook, we can see that it's green as it's already up to date. So this is dynamic inventory script for oVirt. Now, about the oVirt modules. With oVirt modules, you can manage most of the oVirt infrastructure, like affinity groups, labels, etc. Most of the modules are listed here in the presentation, but you can find all the modules here on official Ansible documentation pages. Those modules works only with oVirt or ref version 4. It's because we are using Python SDK version 4. But we should support all the versions of the version 4, or the minor versions of the version 4. So we support 4.0, 4.1, etc. Those modules, some of those modules was introduced in Ansible 2.2, and then it was significantly improved in 2.3. We added basically majority of the modules. We shipped also facts modules, which are modules which gathers information from about your disks, clusters, etc. I will show you how to use the facts modules later in the live demo. We cover most of the API functionality, but not all. So it's probable that you find some gap which should be implemented. So feel free to open an issue on a GitHub. I will show you the URL for it at the end, and or you can send a pull request if you know Python and if you know how to work with Python SDK version 4. So now I will show you how to work with those modules. The prerequisite for this to be working is that in this live demo, I will be using my local machine. So I have to have installed Python SDK version 4 on my own local machine and also a Python. It should be working with Python 2.7 as Ansible is not yet working on Python 3, but it should in the future. And the second important thing is Ansible 2.3. Most of the stuff does not work with 2.2, so you should be using 2.3, which should be out in a month or so. So in this demo, I will show you how to provision your environment. Then I will tell you something about check mode and diff mode. And then I will show you how to use Ansible as a console, as a command line interface, which is using Ansible console command. So this playbook is using my localhost machine, as I told you already. Here, this is a new statement which you did not see yet, but basically this statement says where to look for the variables for our playbook. This is a file which we have right here on the left side, and we have defined here a URL for our oVirt engine, the username, the password, which should be used to manage our environment, and if we want to use insecure connection. This is just an example. So as you can see, we are using a plain text password and insecure connection, but you should not use it. And if you will use it in a production environment, you should use something called Ansible Vault, which encrypts your passwords. And then we have some variables here for data centers, for cluster, for host, for storage, and virtual machine. So this playbook will do a very simple thing. It deploys a data center cluster, adds a host, adds a storage, and then create a disk and virtual machine, and it starts the virtual machine. So first of all, when you are working with oVirt modules, you need to log in there. This task obtain an SSO token, which you will use in all other tasks later. You just pass the URL, username, and password. That's all you need to pass. This module returns you a oVirt auth fact, which contains the SSO token. So you don't re-log in every task, but you log in only once, and then at the end you need to log out and revoke the token. So as I said, this example first of all adds a data center. As you can see, you can specify few parameters which you want to have. In this example, we specify a name, that it should use a local data center, and a compatibility version for the two. Then we create a cluster in the data center. We add hosts. We are here using a password for the host. Again, you should be using a different approach in production environments. Adding an NFS storage to the data center. If you would be using an iSCSI storage or a cluster, etc., you just basically need to change this NFS to iSCSI, etc. you can find more information in a documentation. Then adding a disk. As you can see, here is a register which basically says register the output of this module to the variable called mydisk. We need to register this specific variable because later we will use it to attach the disk into our VM, and we need to know the ID of the disk. So here we create a VM with some specific memory, in this case 512 megabytes of memory. It's server VM with one network interface. And as I said, at the end we revoke the token. So now if I will run this playbook, you can see that is adding a data center, adding a cluster, adding a host. If I will now show you my environment, oh, I didn't show you that it was clear before I ran the task, but trust me, it was. As you can see, it's now installing a host. No storage is here, no virtual machines and no disks, but the data center and cluster is already added, as we defined. 4.2 version at Intel Control family, etc. And it will take a while to be done. And meanwhile, I can show you the documentation of those modules. As you can see, you can find it on the official Ansible documentation, Ansible official pages, and you can find here all the modules. And if I will, for example, show you the oVirt VM's modules, you can see there is some short description of the module, that it manages virtual machines. Then you have a synopsis section, which describes that module in like 3 sentences. Then you have requirements. As I said, you need to use Python SDK version 4 or higher, and Python. Then another section is options. It lists all the parameters which you can use with that module. There is a lot of parameters, and they are described in the description, in the comment section. So if you do want to know more about specific parameters, you just should read that documentation. And if you think it's not complete or if it's missing something, just feel free to open an issue or feel free to fix it if you know what's wrong there. Then there are some basic information, like if it's required, what are the default values, and what values you can use for that specific parameter. If I will scroll down, you will see that there are some choices for the operating system, like RHEL 7, etc. Here, for example, the default state is present, and for the VM, the present state means always the running. So if you create a VM, as we, for example, did in our example, it will be a running VM. The another section in the documentation is example section, where are the most common cases described how to use, creating a VM from template, creating a stateless VM. Lots of parameters describe how to use in it, using multiple interfaces for Cloud Init, using a sysprep, how to work with CDs, hot plugging memory, and etc. Now, as I said, every module has to return something which you can later use. Every oVirt module returns an ID, which is the ID which is in the API or in the database of the oVirt. This is basically what you should use when you later want to manage that specific entity later on. Then another thing that every module returns is a dictionary which describes that entity. So if it's a VMs module, it will return a VM dictionary. If it's a cluster module, it will return a cluster dictionary. If it's data center module, it will return a data center dictionary. And that dictionary contains information about attributes you can find in the REST API. So if you take a look at this URL, you can find all the attributes of the VM, and you can use all the attributes. You can later access all of those attributes of the VM. But as you can see, there are some attributes which in the REST API are shown as links. For example, the disk attachments. If you want to know which disks are attached to a VM and you will use this module, you will just see that it's empty because there is no information about these attachments. This and we solved it with the special attribute which you need to pass to the module, and it's called nested, fetch nested. You need to set it to true, and if you set it to true, the modules will fetch also the information about the nested entities of specific entity. So you can later know what disks are attached to a VM or what applications are running on a VM. I will show you this example later on. So meanwhile, we have our environment up and running. As you can see, we have up and running VM with the disk. As you can see, there's one network interface. It's bootable disk with oVirt interface with an NFS storage. So now, if I rerun this playbook, you can see that everything, first of all, everything was created, everything was changed. Then if I will rerun this Ansible playbook, you can see that nothing was changed because nothing needs a change. Now here comes pretty nice feature of oVirt modules. It's called check and diff. Check and diff means that if you want to check the environment and you don't want to apply the changes into your environment, those changes won't be applied. And the diff means that if there are some changes, show me what changes are there. So basically, I have here another playbook, which again connects to the oVirt, and at the end it removes the token, and in the middle there is one task which is calling oVirt VMs module, and it just upgrades the memory of our VM. The force here means that it will be hot plugged. If it won't be there, it won't be hot plugged, but saved for next run. Now, if I will run the Ansible playbook with check and diff, first of all, as you can see, we here are using 1 gig of memory, and the VM itself has just 512 megabytes of memory. So if you now run this playbook with the check and diff parameters, you can see that it will tell us that the VM before had that specific amount of memory, and after it will have that specific amount of memory, and the VM will be changed. But if you take a look at that system, the defined memory wasn't changed because we are using a check parameter which does not apply our needed changes. So here, as you can see, there is still 512 megabytes of memory. Now, if you remove those two parameters, it will be applied as it was said before. The VM will now have 1 gig of memory. As you can see, it was already updated here. So this is nice feature. And another feature I want to show you is how to use it with Ansible console command. Ansible console command can replace, partially can replace our command line interface. It's installed with the Ansible package, RPM package, and it can be called as follows. You then need to specify, by default it connects to the local host, and we need to use here a connection local because I'm using first of all, I forgot that you need to use credentials again because the console does not know how to connect to the oVirt. So there is an alternative if you don't want to use the configuration in YAML. You can use also the environment variables. You can see them right here, just a username, password, and the URL. So we need to first create those variables, and then we can connect. We can use the Ansible console. So if you now write an oVirt and tap, you will get list of all oVirt modules. Now, if you, for example, want to see all the VMs in the system, you just write an oVirt VMs facts, hit enter, and it will list all the information from the about the VMs. As I told, if you want to know, for example, what disks are attached to a specific VM, you can see that there's empty list, but our VM has actually a disk because we attached that disk to a VM. So this is actually lying. So if you want to know more, we need to use a fetch nested set to true. And as you can see, now we will see the ID of the disks attached to the VM. But you don't know, for example, if you can see that, for example, the statistics, if you want to know what's the name of the statistic, you need to use which attributes should be fetched along with ID. Here you can see, or you can pass also description, etc. All the whatever you need. But by default, we don't fetch those nested links because you need to do additional requests to the API. So by default, it's switched off, so it's faster. Now, I think the last thing I will show you is, for example, how to stop the VM which is running here. With the oVirt VMs. Now, if you write the oVirt VMs module and you hit tab, you will get the list of all the parameters you can use. Now we will use a state stopped because we want to stop that VM, and the name of the VM is my VM, and we need to use force true because there is no guest agent running, so we just forcibly shut it off because there is nothing running physically. And in a few seconds, we should see that it was stopped. I think that that's most of the stuff I wanted to show you. So the most important link is this link to the official Ansible documentation, where you have the list of the modules and all the information you need to start using it, but you need to wait for Ansible 2.3 release. Here is some example how to use those modules also with Ansible 2.2, but you need to do some hacks. So I think it's better to wait for 2.3 release. Now, if you will find some issue with the modules, you just should use the GitHub Ansible, and you can see there's issues and you can open it. All of the oVirt modules are automatically labeled with the oVirt flag or oVirt label and assigned to me, so I will fix it. As you can see here, this is a directory where all the modules are stored if you want to know, if you want to see how it works. This is all from me, so if you have any questions, I can answer them. Or Martin already did, I guess. It can be parallel, but that's basically whatever you specify in etc ansible /ansible.cfg, and you can specify all various a lot of stuff there. So it's good to check that file. It's very well documented, so you know what you can change. If you have playbooks to use an engine setup, yes, there is. So if you check out the Ansible Galaxy, there is a set of playbooks to run. For example, the oVirt log collector, engine setup, maybe engine the engine cleanup, etc. So yes, it's there. The create clusters and a group of hypervisors, I think I show it here. So this is part of those modules. But engine setup and using of the oVirt environment is different. So for that, you need to use some special playbooks like using a YAM, etc. And for the rest, you need to use our modules. Uh-huh. So it was already answered. I'm not sure what do you mean by Docker support. There are modules for a Docker, but it's not relevant to the oVirt modules. So you need to check out the Docker modules here. It's supported, but not part of the oVirt. So feel free to check it. Okay. I think it's all. So thank you for watching and bye.